summer wine.
When I woke up, the sun was shining in my eyes. My silver spurs were gone, my head fell twice its size. She took my silver spurs, $1 and a dime, and left me craving for more summer wine.
Could I say, welcome to Tales for Wales, the pod that never fails to pair the finest guests with the vintage history that offers notes of two podcast hosts. I'm trying to write like something sommelier.
At the first hurdle.
I thought I could just wing it, but I know nothing about wine.
I was going to say, how long have you been working on that one for?
About a week. just working a week in the background.
I like how you just went the same thing we did last time when we had you girls on as well. It was like, right, wine references, just chuck them in as much as possible.
But I didn't know any wine references, and I forgot to kind of research. So I went with vintage notes of, and then my notes just stop after that word. So I apologise.
You thought, it's fine. I'm confident enough to wing it on the day.
I thought, I know wine.
I'm absolutely fallen to pieces. Yeah,
yeah, it crumbled.
Just stop at vintage notes.
Vintage notes. Done. That's it. Done. I don't need any further. Yeah. Well, you can tell this isn't just me and Jack. We've got our two guests previous guests who come back from Vintage. Oh, sorry, what's the name of the company again?
Vin Van Cymru, isn't it? Come on, man. You're doing us up here.
You're
tucking us up here.
I'm so tired. I was just saying to Jack before the podcast, like, mate, I'm so tired today. This might be the last you ever hear of me. I might expire at the end.
Absolutely showing us up in front of the company as well. Oh, what's your company name?
Sorry, what is this again?
Vintage Cymru or something?
I'm so sorry.
It's absolutely fine.
I know, it's Vin Van Cymru, isn't it?
Well done,
yes.
Someone's done that homework.
I know.
Teacher's pat over here. It's the bare minimum that is required.
Amazing last minute Googling, guys.
Look, I can edit out the typing. Yeah.
No, because I was going to go with wines and crimes, but that's not what your company is it? That's just an aspect of what Sarah does.
Well, yeah, so we've got Vin Van Cymru, which is my wine company, and then together with Angela, we do Wines and Crimes, which is a wine tasting event that is, it goes through the company, obviously, otherwise HMRC will be on my ass. But
can edit out that, just let us know if you need to edit it out, that's fine.
So yeah, that's something that we do together as kind of like a side hustle. Just for fun.
And the reason you come back on is because last episode was really fun, you guys did, but I think we just missed the event you were doing, whereas this time there's time for people to get tickets and come, and it's on the hang on let me not wing this.
21st of May.
21st of May.
21st of May.
21st of May. Diane, boys.
Yeah, so this episode was going to come out on the 18th, but we're going to come out a little bit earlier, so people have time to get their tickets. So this should go on the 11th.
Priority treatment.
Yeah, there we
Yay.
go. I'm crawling
and you guys
it
are
back.
coming, right?
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we're going to be there. I don't know how good we're going to deal with the wine. We're not really wine boys by default, but we'll trust you guys. You guys do the pairings and things, don't you? So we're going to...
Sarah, you can't trust me at all with that. I have nothing to do with the actual selection of the wine. That is all on Sarah. But then with the wine element, so it's all paired, and the whole point is you have to guess the link. So even if you're not a wine connoisseur, even if it's not your bag, you get to try it, and you're going to have to try and get into my brain and figure out why I've chosen this wine to go with this crime. Like it's it's a twisted place, my brain. But it's fun to try and figure it out. The connections are incredible. And you can drink beer at the same time. It's fine.
Oh, perfect.
You're basically just guaranteed I'm going to be double parked. I'll have the wine because I'll feel I won't be able to not have a wine because I'll feel like I'm letting you guys down.
Double park?
And then I'll be I'll just have it. Oh yeah, we've done the double park joke.
Or
double fisted.
Double fisted. I'll be double fisting all night is what I'll be doing.
Where do we go from here?
Yeah. Well, do you want to say what the theme is for the upcoming one?
Yeah, so the name of this event, so it's Wines and Crimes, Tarts and Streetwalkers. So any guess what it might be about?
Tarts and Streetwalkers?
Oh, well done. You got it. Got it in one.
Well, I'm cheating because unlike Frank's, I've actually done a little bit of research. Like I said, the modicum of research that's required for me.
I have, because I showed my wife and she was like, "This sounds so cool." I was like, "Yes, it is very cool."
She's welcome to come as well.
Oh, she'd love to. I think we're going to try and bring our partners as well, because they don't care whenever we talk about history. The minute they find out there's wine, they're like, "That sounds sick."
Yeah, there's an interest then. Yeah,
yeah. And it's the 21st, and where is it? It's in Corporation. Yeah, Corporation Market, isn't it? Is that what it's called?
So the Corp, that's, it used to be one of the rougher pubs in Cardiff, one of the ones I wasn't allowed into as a teenager, by order of my dad. Oh, you used to go there? Did you used to drink there?
Yeah, I used to go there before Wales games.
Oh, yeah.
So
I just remember there being...
I never went to the the Corporation when it was that. I haven't actually done, much to my shame, I haven't done the Canton Mile. I've never done the Canton Mile.
Oh, well, you can do it now, but it'll be a little bit nicer if you do come into the Corp.
Yeah, it's quite a nice...
Maybe we'll start out with your wine and crimes night, and then I'll go from there. Start that way, yeah.
Sounds good. So yeah, it's the Corp Market. There's the Corp Yard as well. So inside you've got like a pub, bar kind of scenario with lots of different shops and indie kind of people. And then outside there's a huge marquee, sorry. With some street food, and we actually normally when I do my tasting events I'll do them inside in like a little tasting area next to the shop, but because we sell so many tickets we've had to move the event to the marquee and move it outside, which is really, really fun, especially when
humble
it's like,
marquee brag there.
Oh, just saying, guys.
They look really fun. We've not been to one yet, but we've seen the socials. You do really fun videos posts, and they do look a real laugh, so we can't wait. Where can people get tickets for it?
Oh, everyone can get a ticket on vinvancymru.co.uk.
And what's
I should say that. Sorry, I'll let you answer that in a second. But I should say it is a wine tasting. The main tickets are for the event with wine. But if you're not a wine drinker but you're interested in true crime, there's an alcohol-free ticket as well. That's a little bit cheaper.
Cool. Oh, there we go.
So anyway, what is Vin Vancouver, Sarah?
I was just joking because I didn't know the name of the company earlier. It was just a
it was a joke. It was a good one, mate.
Yeah, well done. Good callback to my company not being memorable. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. This is going really well.
Not even 10 minutes in, you're insulting the guests.
It's because I'm not drinking. I need booze to be somewhat approachable.
Are you not drinking?
No, I'm having a siesta. No, not a siesta. I'm having a little
the opposite
break.
Of a siesta.
Yeah. I'm having a couple of weeks. We're having like 3 weeks off. I'm trying to do until next Friday. So I've got 7 more days of just trying to not booze as much.
To fill you both in, we went on a pod trip to Chepstow. And it was
it looked fun. I saw that.
An ungodly amount of alcohol was consumed to the point where we were both just absolute shells of our former selves.
Yeah.
The next day, and Frank was just like, "I'm done. I'm absolutely done for a bit."
On the Sunday, I was like, "Right, I'm taking a month off because I was just too." My hangover was like, it was almost spiritual. I was just so broken from the hangover. So I was like, "Right, I'm having a month off, and I'm gonna get back to my former strength." And now,
that's fair.
But by the 21st, I'll be firmly back on it, so that'll be double fisting the night away.
Repeating the cycle again. Then,
shall we? Are you two drinking? And I know Jack. I assume Jack's drinking.
Well,
of course.
Yeah. So, what are you guys drinking?
We are we're drinking wine. Mm-hmm. You may be surprised to know.
Type, yes.
And we're double fisting with each other as well. I mean, we're
the joke, telling off as well.
I love the telling
off. We have two fists, and in each fist is a wine. That's all. Right, I'm taking over. We're drinking. So Angela's obviously going to share a little story with you a little bit later, and I've paired it with a wine, which happens to be a Chenin Blanc, but we are also, so we'll talk about that a little later as well if you're keen. So we are also drinking another Chenin Blanc that is from a supermarket and comparing to see which one is Chateau Garbage and which one is delicious.
So it's a bit of a double sizzle reel there for something later that all will be revealed.
Yeah.
Double sizzle, I like that. Sounds much better than double fisting. But is it as fun?
We'll find out by the end of the episode.
I'm just wondering how much traction we're going to get out of double fisting joke tonight, and I have a suspicious feeling it's going to be quite a lot.
Yeah. Well, should we get started then? Should we get started and we'll hand over to Angela?
Yeah. Cool. So this event, Wines and Crimes, Tarts and Streetwalkers, it's all about sex work and the history of sex work in Wales in the 18th and early 19th centuries. And so sex work is a funny thing to look at in histories of crime because as much as you think it would be, sex work wasn't and technically still isn't illegal. It's not, yeah. I think most people would think that. And it's because a lot of things around sex work is criminalized. So you can do whatever you want with your body. You can service people with it in any way you want. That's
is it
not
like specifics
illegal.
Though? Is it that they clamp down on?
It's soliciting, and it's soliciting in different ways. Or if you're like, say, running a brothel, it has to be done in very particular ways. So it's everything around it is legalized or criminalized in such a way that it makes the actual selling of sex very difficult. Which also then won't go into it, but in a modern context, that makes it very dangerous for sex workers as well, especially ones who are economically vulnerable. Was it implying that maybe it depends on what kind of sex act that was illegal there? You're like, you can do what you want with your body. Yeah, but like up to a point, right? How many fists is too many fists?
Well, yeah.
Stop mentioning fists.
I knew that was going to come out. I could just see it.
Right. Sarah actually wagged her finger at me.
I thought I was so good with Sarah when you just went, oh, Angie, for God's sake.
This
is the same sort of theme you get like on your event nights as well. You're going, shut up, for God's sake, you've got a crowd in.
It's a lot of us just going, why did you say, okay, it's out there now, okay.
Yeah. This is live. We cannot edit this out. Yeah.
Right, sorry.
My mum went on a march for safer, for like making it safer for sex workers to operate. And really good, really noble. Not great when you're a 14-year-old boy and your mum's gone on a walk for sex workers. The amount of abuse I got for that.
But I said the content writes itself there, didn't it?
Yeah, but no, yeah. So
props to your mum. That's that's great.
Yeah, she taught me a lot about like it's like you said, it's quite a heavy topic, but it is,
yeah, because there's so much stigma around it.
Lots of respect for it now, but back then, I imagine I had a dog piled on you, making fun of you. But,
when I was 14, I think you're probably one of the chief abusers. But yeah,
yeah, quite possibly. Anyway, back to the very serious subject, Andy. Angie, sorry.
It's more than fine with it being serious and then descending into carnage because that's kind of how I operate. So sex work, technically legal, but we do find lots of evidence of it in criminal records because of all of the shenanigans around it. That it's either because of something related to sex work that's criminalized, so operating what back in the day was called a disorderly house or a bawdy house or a house of ill repute, which
like
if it was a house of ill repute.
That's pretty cool. It sounds like a heavy metal
hotel
band
in Chepstow, wasn't it? A house of ill repute.
So just as a side note, so one of my cats is a little terrorist, and she loves a cardboard box. And anytime she's naughty, she steals something. Like she'll steal like a packet of food that she shouldn't have. She takes it in there to eat, and I call that like her den of iniquity or her house of ill repute.
You have created a house of ill repute,
and she loves it. But she's not illegal either, so it's fine. Right, back on track. So there's lots of sex work that we can find in historical records relating to crime, but it's not sex work itself, although sometimes it is, and I'll give you a couple examples of that. But just as a recap, so the records that I use in my research, they're all from Wales, and they're all from what was called the Court of Great Sessions, which was the highest criminal court in Wales between the 1530s and 1830, when it was abolished and replaced with the English Assizes, which was the precursor to Crown Court.
And if people
think Great Session sounds like a great name for a pub, by the way. That sounds
God,
incredible.
that's
Court
it?
of Great Sessions. I'd be there every night.
Yeah.
And also, I realised we did this on the last episode, but you're not just a history Fana, you've got credentials, so maybe we should say as well, what are your credentials for knowing
I
this?
I have a PhD in history, so I am technically a doctor, which always sounds weird. Wow. I am not saving anyone's life. Everyone I look at is dead, so do not trust me.
Is there a doctor in the house? I mean, but like, can't really help.
Do you want to know about sex workers in the 1800s? Oh, you have an heart attack. I got you. Yeah. No problem.
Yeah, it's like I can tell you about how you can have a good time and
So you want to talk about double fisting? Or,
that's got to be somewhere in the record. Yeah. But I'm also I'm an associate professor of British social and cultural history at the University of Leicester. So I get paid to do this as well, which is amazing.
So there's kind of like parity on this podcast, isn't it, at the moment, where you with all those credentials and then me and Frank's absolute chances that get things wrong half the time.
But that's the great thing about
don't
history.
go past the second page of Google.
But history is one of those things that so many people love it, and I think that's great. The only time I don't like it is when it's usually men of a certain age find out I'm a historian and then quiz me about tanks and Spitfires and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, you're right. I'll give my PhD back. I don't actually know.
Yeah, guess what? I guess I'm wrong then. I guess all those years of study amount to nothing. Yeah.
So, but it is like history is one of those things that I think can be quite accessible. A lot of people try and make it quite inaccessible, just by the way that they present it. But it is something that I think everyone can connect with. And that's one of the things we do with Wines and Crimes is we have fun with it, but it's all factual. None of it is made up. It's just presented in a way that is hopefully engaging, but it's telling stories, but it's telling stories about our past, because these are most of the people who show up in these records are the average person back in the day. So they're, most of us are descended from average people back in the day. So these are our ancestors. So they're our histories. Even if we're not descended from those individuals, there will be stories like this in all of our pasts. Because just because these are cases that showed up in criminal courts, it doesn't mean these people were necessarily criminals. Yeah, you were essentially criminalized for being poor back in the day, and I think that's one of the things that comes out in stories of sex work in the past. Because a lot of the reason why women, and the evidence we have is typically from women who were selling sex. Men certainly did it as well, but we just don't have the same records of that because that was illegal. Or men selling sex to other men, that was absolutely illegal. But the main reason, at least for the evidence I have, that women engaged in sex work was to make ends meet. It's part of what historians like to call the economies of makeshift. So it's basically like a gig economy. You do absolutely everything you can just to get food in the house or to pay a rent. And it
was the Uber of the time.
Yeah,
you didn't have lottery at the time, so you had to,
Yeah, exactly. Needs must.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's one reason. That's one of the many reasons I tend to avoid calling women who are engaged in this work prostitutes, because like they're not defined by these as a career choice. Yeah. It's a thing they may have even only done once and got caught, or they may have been called that and actually weren't, which was the case. Like I study up to about 1830, but if you go well after that, there's like Jack the Ripper in London, and most of his victims are now known as being sex workers, but there's only evidence that one ever engaged in that. Most of them weren't. It's because of the stigma of the time. There's a woman outside at night, she must be a whore. It's like, no, she was poor and had nowhere to go. So there's reasons why we say sex work instead of that, but I'm going on a tangent there. Okay. So I do that. This is why I need a script.
Honestly, you've come to the right place. Going off on tangents is what is our bread and butter, really. Absolutely. Don't worry about that.
I could listen to you talk for so long. I think it's you. I don't know. I love it when people are knowledgeable about stuff. You can just sit and listen. So they're not a tangent. You've got an audience.
Okay,
listening.
Brilliant.
I do have a little image of you, Franks, just like, in reception, like Das war Derbyn, and there's story time, and everyone's like sat on the floor with their legs crossed.
I'm literally sat on.
Teacher who's I can imagine that's what you're doing.
It's like
right
you've got
now.
a camera in the room.
More.
My wife's in the lounge with her friend, so I'm in our bedroom. I'm on the bed, and I'm sat cross-legged on the bed with my hands in my hand. Yeah.
I was about to say, that's very like those who grew up in a Welsh school, croesi coesau plethu brachiau, isn't it? Which is crossed legs, folded arms.
I'm literally sat there. I was sat cross-legged. So yeah, very
crisscross applesauce on the bed. I wish my students were as attentive, although some of them are. Some of that.
So I'd much prefer if you're like, stop sitting in your seats. Everyone get up, sit on the floor, cross your legs, and fold your arms.
Shake up the sillies and sit on the floor. One of the modules I teach, and I absolutely love teaching this module. It's a final year one, and it's gender crime and deviance in 18th century England and Wales. Mostly Wales, but it's at a university in England, so I have to, taunt them in some way. And the number of like male students who come to the first day and then realize it's like about gender and they have a gender too and then leave because I'm like, oh.
Is that true?
I've had that happen before. Yeah.
No
it's like
way.
Clues in the name, mate. It's like,
exactly. But it's like I don't know your gender. But it's quite fun because like basically all of the things they talk about at Wines and Crimes, or turn the cases that we use as source analyses in that class, so that I've used in my research in like very serious ways. I can then take to Wines and Crimes and have fun with.
Yeah, fun.
And
you've done
tell
the
the
serious
stories in
bit.
different ways.
Now you can, sort of.
But then you
riff on
can
it
drink with it.
There's sometimes some crossover back. So if it's something that I've taught with before and then used for Wines and Crimes, and then I've actually taught the day after a Wines and Crimes once. And actually that one was about sex work, and I wouldn't say I was unhinged, but like the stories were still fresh in my mind. I'm like, it's like, right, guys, I've got a great story for you. But
bringing a box of wine into the lecture room, just like, look, I'm just riffing here now. I'm on a roll. I got to carry on.
Well, it was, no comment. No, I would never.
She still needs a job after this.
I don't. No, I keep the wine for afterwards. That's all for me. I drink that in my office.
You wouldn't share it with a lecture hall. Why would you?
Absolutely not. Anyway, should we talk about sex work?
Yes. Go, continue.
Let's talk about sex work, baby. Sorry.
I was going to join in, but nobody needs to hear that. Sarah can actually sing. I can't. So, right. So, sex work. So, I've actually published on this as well. If anyone's interested, I've got a chapter in a book through University of Wales Press called "Gender in Modern Welsh History," and the chapter's about sex work. So, some of the stuff I'm talking about here.
Both of you very adept at the humble brag. I like it.
Well,
Get those in.
It's called signposting. Should anyone want to know more?
Yeah, I'm going to steal that. I'm just signposting.
Just signposting. Don't expect it to be as sassy as this. Very serious. So, sex work, we find more of it in criminal records from the 1750s onwards because of the passing of a piece of legislation called the Disorderly Houses Act. So this ties into when I said body houses are houses of ill repute. So body is BAWDY, not body, like a physical body. It's someone who is, a bod was a madam, essentially. So somebody, so a body house was a house where you would go to buy sex. So it's it's a yieldy way of saying brothel. And so there was legislation brought in to regulate body houses, but it wasn't just about the buying or selling of sex. It was called the Disorderly Houses Act because it was also cracking down on pubs, unlicensed pubs, gambling houses, basically anywhere that the lower orders of society would go to spend what little money they had and get up to no good.
So we're saying no to fun. That basically,
it was
where we would spend most of our time now.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But it wasn't. But it was regulating a particular type of person. It was regulating the average person, like poorer people, and how we would have spent our leisure time back in the day. And that just happened to also include places where one would go to go a-whoring. So because of that, then we find people being prosecuted for running a disorderly house, not because sex was being bought and sold in that, but because they were having noisy fun while doing it. That was the issue. So it was about regulating behaviors. But there was no mention of prostitution or that word in legislation in Britain until 1824. And that was in the Vagrancy Act. And that's where we see common prostitute show up, because any woman out at night on her own must be a prostitute, and so that's where
brush,
so that's
still
where
true now, obviously.
Well, obviously, do you not go out with an escort after hours? Run around with a can of mace and a dog.
A brother or a husband or your whore. That's it. It's simple.
I'm out there with my whores every day. Me and my girls, we're out there. Anyway, so the way that we find sex work, or I find sex work in records, is usually related to crimes that were committed around sex work. So one of the big ways is pickpocketing. So you would get a woman who got very, very close to a man, and to be fair, we don't even know if these women were intending on selling sex to these men. Men are very easy to flirt with and very easy to get close to. So who knows what their actual intent? Sorry,
hang on a minute.
Present company excluded. Let me talk to your wives. They might nod and smile, but hashtag not all men. So there are a lot of cases of men prosecuting women, and the narrative would often go, I was just sitting there in this pub minding my own business having a drink, and she came up and asked me to buy her a drink, and that's basically code for, do you want a good time? And so I bought her a drink, and then she asked me to follow her down this lane into the graveyard or wherever, and next thing you know, my pocket watch is missing, or my purse full of shillings or whatever it is missing. So there's a lot of prosecutions related to that. So there's one example, and this is actually, I need to double check the date. It's sometime in the 18th century. Details don't matter.
No, not on this one.
Yeah, again, you're in the right place. Don't worry.
I had it up, and then I ended up Googling whether or not a certain flower is poisonous to cats, and that's replaced the
tab's lost now forever.
The National Library of Wales database, so it's priorities, boys. So this was Carmarthen. I think it was 1780, around there, latter half of the 18th century, in Carmarthen. And so this takes place in the churchyard of St. Peter's, Carmarthen. So if anyone's familiar with that. What's that?
Sexy.
I mean, who doesn't love a sexy churchyard? Why wouldn't you want to lead
someone down to that way? Yeah.
Right? So this is the church that's at would it be the top or the bottom of King Street? It's at the end of King Street. So
you officially know more about that
by the car park. Yeah. Carmarthen's one of the few towns in Wales that I am relatively familiar with. So it's this churchyard. And so the local excise officer, do you know what an excise officer is?
No,
educate us.
Educate us.
I only learned this recently because it's really boring. It's nothing to do with my research. So an excise officer is like a customs officer, but where customs officers are interested in collecting duties on imported goods, excise officers are worried about taxes on domestically produced goods.
Okay, right. So,
right, whatever happens to this guy, screw him. Well, that's sort of what she tried to do.
Yeah.
She kind of almost did. So this excise officer has a conversation with a local woman she's the wife of a cobbler, and cobblers, they repair shoes. They don't make shoes, they repair them. So they're not really well paid. So that suggests the status of this woman. She probably needed a bit of money. So they agree that he'll pay her 6 shillings for a bit of action then and there, and then another 6 shillings the next time they meet, whenever that would be. So maybe they've got an established relationship here. This is their arrangement. But he says that's what they were going to do that night. So they agree to that. They go to the porch of the church. She lifts her skirts. I'm assuming
the porch as well.
The porch. Yeah, well, privacy. He presumably unbuttons his breeches because breeches, 18th century. I mean, nothing turns a girl on.
Like when get those breeches off.
Yeah. Lower the flap of those breeches, boy.
Did we use flap of the breeches in one of the bingos that we did for Wines and Crimes?
There was some sort of flap on
it. It was definitely flap.
And what a one to mark off it was, I imagine.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Please, I keep distracting
I think we might actually, as a side note, when we're done this, we should explain the context of bingo, because I don't think we've ever mentioned the crime bingo.
No.
So why are there flaps in bingo? So
I like the ambiguity of it all. Just keep it like
come back to that.
Keep it guessing. Keep them guessing, Angie.
Yeah. Back to that. Anyway, so excise officer lowers his flaps. They're about to get at it, and then someone comes into the churchyard carrying a lantern and disrupts them. So she lowers her skirts
through the porch of all places.
Yeah, I know.
Who'd have thought of that?
Well, I don't know that they came into the porch, but they came into the churchyard, and that was enough to startle him because he's the respectable local excise officer. She's a married woman, so
Of
discretion.
course.
So this person comes into the churchyard carrying a lantern and just disturbs them, and they don't end up having sex. And a little while later, the excise officer realizes that his pocket watch is missing, and so he goes to the magistrates and tries to prosecute this woman. I think her name was Elizabeth, to try and prosecute her for pickpocketing.
She said Elizabeth dragged me to this church porch.
Yeah, she
almost
accosted
forced herself
me.
upon me. Yeah, and then nicked my pocket watch.
She opened my flap.
She forcibly opened my flaps. Yeah,
forced open my flap. And well, do you want to guess maybe what happened? Did they believe him? Did they?
I mean, the pessimist in me is saying, considering the time and basically what you've just said about how women were very poorly treated, I'm going to assume they sided with the bloke.
Yeah.
Yeah, both going to say sided with the bloke. Well, so just to give you, I think I may have mentioned this last time. So the court system back then works slightly differently. So you would press charges and there would be an indictment drawn up that would go to a grand jury. They would decide whether or not there was enough evidence to actually go to trial. And then if it went to trial,
sort of CPS at the moment,
exactly.
Crown
Yeah,
Prosecution Service,
exactly. Yeah. The grand juries were replaced with CPS. So there'd be the grand jury that would decide if there's enough evidence to go to trial. And then if it went to trial, the jury would decide if you were guilty or not guilty. She wasn't even indicted.
Oh,
yeah.
Good on Liz.
Yeah,
because she dropped trow and whatever she did what she was about to, and just.
I'm guessing the grand jury said it's like, "Yith played a game of fucketh around and findeth out."
Yeah.
You should embroider that on a pillow.
Actually, I think
you could make bank on Etsy with something like that.
Let's get a T-shirt printed.
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
Should get that tattooed.
I'm just saying, do it before we do, because I'm going to steal that.
We could do
joint
a collaboration,
guys.
Yes.
Yeah, 25% each.
I see. Yeah, like this.
Right,
that's another. That could be another Creasy IT collab.
Yes.
Yes.
Fuck
A business
around
deal
and
is
find
afoot.
it
I like
There
it.
we go.
Yeah.
All right, I'll send you the contract after the end
Send it
of
over.
the podcast. All right, guys.
You heard it here first. So that's the sort of places that we find evidence of sex work. So the sex work was sort of the action or the background of the story of the criminal activity. Sometimes it's worse than that. Sometimes there's assaults involved, and that's horrible. We're not going to have a laugh at that. Although I do have one case that every time I'm in Cardigan, I'm like, can we go into the Black Lion? Because I've got a story about this place. But it's more, it starts there and then it ends in horrible violence nearby. So it's not really a good, really a good party story.
Yeah, not one for a night out usually. Yeah.
No. And this is kind of one of the things we did mention on the last time as well, that we deal with some sensitive topics and we do our best to not fuck it up in layman's terms. And sometimes we do have to be quite, we've got lines on what kind of topics we do or do not mention. And I think the last time we were like, we never mention this thing. And then we actually said it on your podcast, and you're like, "Oh, for fuck's sake! Now it's on our podcast."
Thanks for dropping us in it. Like,
but
no, don't worry.
I think I was referring to the same case as well.
We did an episode on the Steel Town murders before, and that has some sort of dark elements to it. And we were so worried because we were covering something quite serious. Like when I was scheduling it to put out, and we do a description and everything in the sort of pod notes. And Franks was like, "You have to put a disclaimer and put this massive disclaimer in caps to be like this because we really don't want to run afoul of anything like that because that's not the intention at all. So we get it. You don't want to sort of cross that line.
And to be fair, I think you guys do it in a similar way to us, which is why this is so much fun. We just want to talk about something historical, something that's really interesting, and people obviously have an interest in it. They want to hear about the story, especially from people who know what they're talking about. And it is tricky sometimes to get the tone right, but if you worry too much about how it's coming across, then you're not going to say it at all.
Yeah,
and I think people are just appreciative that you just give it a go, and you just say, listen, like, I might not be the leading expert in this, or I might be in Angela's case. But it's just, it's actually
as long as you give those certain aspects the right reverence, isn't it? That's okay. Then I think
exactly.
Like you mentioned earlier, you're telling people stories who otherwise wouldn't be get. You hear about the heroes and you hear about like the kings, but I think it's so cool to hear about the normal, real people, and like that's
those normies.
Yeah, the normies, because they're what make up 99%, and they've all got interesting stories. So I think it's paying homage to the ordinary folk. I quite like that.
Exactly.
Definitely.
And so I think even with this stuff, as long as you're punching up and not punching down, you're
definitely.
okay.
Always
so
the
it's
way.
the intention
Always
with
the
it.
way.
Like, you don't want to use a victim from the past as a punchline.
No.
But I think it's perfectly fine to use a perp from the past as a punchline. I do it all the time.
Like you said, that excise officer, he had it coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
how did he?
Penny counting
How did
nerd.
he see that ending?
He deserved having his flaps pulled down. Yeah.
It's like pantsed in the streets. There are loads of stories though where men are out at the pub one night and then they're pickpocketed, and their defense for it's like, no, I knew she was. They would say something like a strumpet, or actually we wanted to use strumpet, or I wanted to use strumpet for the poster, but it's a great word. But
I'm calling my wife that at some point.
I'm going to recommend don't.
You haven't met his wife. She says worse than
stay
him.
married.
Yeah, I was going to say, she'll love that. She'll go mad for it.
As long as there's consent.
Yeah.
Maybe run it past her.
She calls Jag 1,000 things worse than a strumpet.
I wish I could call the strumpet one night.
1,000 things worse than a strumpet. That sounds.
Isn't that a T-shirt right there? Yeah.
There we go.
Right, so that's the second T-shirt we're going to get printed.
Make a note.
Who's taking notes? Yeah.
If only this was recorded. But there's a lot of fellas who are pickpocketed when they're out having a drink, and their defense is, I knew she was like a whore or a strumpet or whatever word they choose to use. They're not saying sex worker.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have done that because I'm married.
Yeah,
like
of course I wouldn't. Yeah,
because that's
is that literally all they had to do? I imagine back then, a lot of the time, is just flash the wedding ring and be like, "Well, I would never do anything tomorrow. Look at me, I'm an upstanding married man."
Exactly.
Yeah. Even if you're caught with your flaps down.
Yeah.
What?
I was gonna do the euphemism with your flap down, Sarah, but then with your cock out. With your cock out.
Sorry. With your flap down. Get down with your flap down? I don't know. I do apologize.
Third T-shirt, nice.
Yeah.
I'm imagining like a Homer Simpson-esque like cartoon.
Oh yeah,
trousers down in this one.
I'm thinking like like Yokel, the guy who's a yokel in The Simpsons, Cletus, and he often wears long johns with a little flap hanging out.
He does, yeah.
All right, it sells itself. Yeah. Might be some copyright issues there.
I'll have to get onto Matt Groening and get some collab going.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd be right up for it.
He'd be replying straight away, I'm sure. Yeah.
Right. Would you guys like to hear another story?
Please.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Again, no one dies in this one. I mean, they're dead now, but
thanks, Ange. Yeah. I think we were all a bit confused about whether they were still alive or not.
They're alive in my heart. So this one, I mean, they should be dead by now. This one's back in 1811. So this is back in, I think it was the October 1st, 1811. October 1811. That's all we need to know. There was a wagoner whose name was Benjamin. And any guesses what a wagoner does?
I was just about to say, what's a wagoner? That's just the guy who was on Britain's Got Talent a few years back, wasn't it?
That's a niche one. That is such a niche.
Yeah. We're my 90s kids, am I right? Yeah.
Him, yeah. See, he's not dead.
Making wagons.
Yes.
Making wagons is a good guess. This guy drove wagons.
What drove wagons?
Yeah, drove wagons. So he was running around with a wagon, or wagoning around with a wagon, I guess. So he had parked up his wagon in Bangor, right across from the cathedral, outside a place called the Mitre Inn, which is still there. It's just not called that anymore. It's called the Castle. So that's what's quite cool about some of these stories is they take place in, a lot of them take place in pubs and stuff like that. So you can figure out if the place is still there. It may have the same name, like the Black Lion in Cardigan, or this. It's not the same name, but it just, you can easily find sort of the history of what it was called and what it is called. So this was right outside the castle. So this guy, Benjamin the Wagoner, he drove this wagon, and based on what was inside and what he was doing with it, he was kind of the equivalent of like a ye olde every or yodel driver. And that's because he had a whole bunch of stuff inside that was supposed to be delivered to a few different places.
And was also late in all the deliveries.
Like, punted it over the wall as well.
Just left it in someone else's field.
I had that happen today.
You weren't there to receive it. I never knocked the door and then just football kicked it over your fence. Yeah.
They take a little line drawing of it on the threshold of the doorway. Anyway, so
that's a universal experience. I like that. That's just, we all know, we've all been there.
Brings us together. So he had a bunch of stuff that was destined for Bangor, and he had that carried inside to the Mitre Inn, but the rest of the stuff was destined to go to Chester, and he left that in the wagon. Rookie mistake. He left that in the wagon overnight, and he left a fair bit. He left 3 boxes, a trunk, a hamper, and a paper wrapped parcel.
Like a tradesman with his tools, you can't do that.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
You should have that sign: "No tools left in the van overnight." That old thing,
which basically says, "My tools are in here."
Yeah.
There's nothing left in my van overnight. There's nothing in this truck. Don't rob me.
Yeah. If anything, that just makes me rob it more.
Yeah, just out of principle. Yeah.
So I think you can see where this is going. So the next morning. Well, buckle up and find out. So he got up the next morning, and he was up bright and early around 5 a.m. and he had to go out and take care of his horses first. Good priorities there. Take care of the horses. Mm-hmm. And then he went to his wagon, and he saw that someone had been inside rummaging around through all the boxes and the trunk and all these things. And the 3 boxes had been broken open, and 2 of them had been emptied out. And obviously this is bad news for Benjamin. So he asks around, and he was told that a local single woman whose name was Anne had done it, because she had been seen in the wagon the night before. So she was responsible for breaking in and stealing all this stuff. Now, Anne was described as being a quote unquote common prostitute. So
must be guilty.
Bit rude,
must
I know.
be. If a woman out at night,
or
it must be.
Well, you remember our friend the excise officer?
Mm.
Not guilty there.
True.
So we'll see where this goes. So the locals knew who she was, and they also knew her reputation for how she made some money. Or at least some of them knew who she was. So the person who identified her worked for the innkeeper. So there's a good chance that he recognized her from her regular dealings, probably in that pub or in and around Bangor. Because like I just mentioned, sex workers did frequently use pubs and inns and stuff to find their clients, but also people to pickpocket. Because to be fair, if I were a sex worker, I'd probably be too lazy to actually go through with it. It'd be like, hey,
what's easier, shagging a guy or just picking his pocket?
Having him buy you a drink, you cozy up to him, put your hand in his pocket, he thinks he likes where this is going.
Free drink, just nick his wallet. Thanks very much.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm done for the night. Yeah.
Boys, if you were sex workers, what would you prefer? How would you go about it?
I don't have the sleight of hand to do pickpocketing, but I'd learn. You know what I mean?
But you've got that raw sexual magnetism.
Well, play to my strengths, I guess. But it's yeah, I don't know. Maybe after
with what you've got, yeah.
Yeah, I do the shagging until I didn't have to. Let's just say that.
Right. Okay. Fair. I mean, yeah. Now that there's like ways to have safe sex, you might as well.
Right now.
Angie, that tone then was just yes, noted. Okay. Anyway, we're back to the.
Anyway, moving on.
I was like, the bit of my brain that's like, but history. Think about STDs. It's like I was switching that off.
Oh, I know the smell would be just horrible. That's all I can think about during this. It's just everyone's like muddy and covered in boils. It's just so gross.
Yeah. So condoms did exist at the time, but they were typically wealthy men had them, and they would use them to protect themselves, and they would rinse them out and reuse them.
Oh,
so they'd usually be made with something like lamb's intestine.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yes, they told us that St Fagans, I believe, on a year 7 or 8
What are
trip.
you going to say at your school?
Yeah, well, it was on a school trip.
Now, boys.
It was on a school trip. Yeah.
What part of St Fagans lends, like the Vulcan's just gone back, like what part of St Fagans lends
That's true.
itself
How
to
old
a
were you when you
lambskin
learned
Johnny?
that?
I don't think he
We were
worked
like-
there.
I went to
Just a
St
man
Fagans
shouting
as a
at us.
kid, but
We
like,
were like,
they
yeah,
never
just a
taught us
random.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
it's man
at
in
the
the
bar
car
with
park.
someone, and some guy was just telling me about it. No, I think it was like someone was on about how back then used to marry off women very young in medieval times and things like that.
Right.
And I don't know why. I think maybe one of the teachers asked very stupidly in front of like a bunch of adolescents, like, "Oh, well, was there any
Contraception.
sort of protection back then, or any contraception, or whatever?" And then some guy went, "Yeah, like lamb's intestines and stuff like that." And everyone's like, "It's
We
Yeah.
absolutely
Sure,
loved
sure.
it,
Yeah.
though. I think everyone
Mm-hmm.
was a little bit crazy for that. 'Cause-
yeah."
I have just finished writing a paper. I'm giving this next week, which is also online, but it's far more serious. But it's about abortion back in the day.
Oof, that must have been tough.
Keeping
back
it
in the
light.
day.
Fun bedtime read. That one, yeah.
But there was like, I'm taking it very, very dark and talking about when anyway. Well, I won't go into that, but it's not good. But there weren't many reliable barrier methods. But there were various herbal remedies that could potentially work. They weren't reliable. They could be dangerous, but there were plenty of
I was going
I
to say,
guarantee you
were
any
the
village-
adverse effects pretty bad? I
Well,
imagine.
my argument is that we do see those.
Shits for days.
This is such a side quest. Because we see records of men giving a woman something to procure an abortion, and my argument, this radical argument, is when it's arsenic, it's probably murder, but when it's pennyroyal, it's probably for an abortion. That's mind blowing, but that's the gist of my argument. But
It's like, arsenic, will that end the pregnancy? Well, technically, yes, it will. Yeah.
Job done. But so women say Anne here, who were probably having fairly regular sex, they would not have wanted to get pregnant. So someone like her, and to be honest, most domestic family recipe collections would have included guidance on recipes for dealing with these female problems. So it was, it wasn't just the lamb intestine Johnny for the lad. Women would have had contraceptive things.
You
Would
had
have
your
done much.
Really?
sort of that time morning after pill
Yeah.
equivalent, so to
can't
speak.
It just blows my mind.
Yeah.
I can't. I think in my mind the condoms were invented in the 70s, and before that it was just hog wild.
Yeah.
They weren't reliable, but
They don't sound it. To be fair.
No.
I love that. Going, just put lamb's intestine
Yeah.
around it. Yeah. You know what? I don't think that's going to work.
That was more to keep the man's knob clean than it was to stop babies from if a man's
I
out
see
doing
what
that,
you mean,
he's not too worried about fathering children. He's probably
get
fathering
what
loads
you
of them.
mean,
That
right.
was all about him.
And was that common knowledge at the time, or would they have believed they've been told by someone, "Oh yeah, just wear this, mate, and everything's good"?
Well, that sort of thing would have been more elite men. They wouldn't have been cheap. So I think is it the Marquis de Sade had one. That's sort of the lore around people like that. The average.
Not even the man on the street can't even get a sheep's intestine. Jesus Christ!
Nope, they were out there just getting
Diet
everyone.
times.
I mean, they probably could, but it wouldn't have been a clean one. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Not
true.
used for-
Yeah.
Soz for that
What
imagery.
what a riff we've gone on.
I know. Right? Should we go back to the wagon?
Let's go back to the wagon. Yeah, the wagon was a
back to the
happier time, I think.
Happier time.
I've got my notes written out here, and I'm still in the first paragraph. Anyway, so the person that ID'd Anne was this fellow who worked in an inn, probably knew who she was. His name was John, and he worked for this innkeeper, and he was the innkeeper's chaise driver. Do you know what a chaise is?
Chaise.
Like a chaise
That
long?
sounds like
It sounds like a chaise long. So he wasn't driving around
a sofa driver. Wow. Of course, I was going to go there.
Yeah, no, it's painted a picture, and that's why I'm giggling.
Yeah.
But a chaise, that's where the term comes from. So it's a thing you sit on, but it's like a lightweight. It's like a lightweight two-seater carriage. If you've watched any ye olde Jane Austen film, they would have been frolicking around in one of those. It's a very frolicky little carriage. So he was the person who drove this for the innkeeper. So he's like the innkeeper's personal chauffeur. So he was about to take the innkeeper off, go home, something like that, around 11 o'clock the night after Benjamin had parked up his wagon. So that night he parked up and was sorting out the horses, and he was getting everything ready, and he heard a woman's voice calling across the way from a house over in his direction saying, "Hurry up, you'd better get out of the wagon." And John looked over and he saw this woman that he recognized. Her name was Anne, saw her in the wagon. And he clocked this, so he realized that probably one of Anne's friends who is keeping six. Do we say that here, or is that just a North American thing?
Watching your six.
I
get that.
Yeah, keeping lookout. Saw someone coming and called out. I love that. I don't know if the mics picked this up, but just now a cop car is going past with the sirens on. So just then they spot John and say, "Oh, you better get out of the wagon. Someone's coming." And then Anne looked up and saw John and called out. I'm guessing she called this out flirtatiously. Will you come to me, dear Jack? Because Jack was a nickname for John. No idea why. Same number of syllables.
I've heard that before, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
no idea
no
what that
shorter,
is.
But yeah,
No.
I get it. Yeah, I've heard that also.
But yeah, so she calls out, it's like, "Oh, will you come to me, my dear Jack?" And John looks over and says to her, it's like, "No, you've got poor lodgings tonight," because she's in the wagon. and then he carried on his way. So in this story, that's the only hint we have of Anne and her sex worker and her like attempts to solicit or at least be sassy to a guy she knows. So the next morning, Benjamin gets up. He's told that Anne was the one who rummaged through his wagon. I don't know why that's like as you do. And she was making her. She was last seen. We're going to revisit a phrase from last time. She was making her way to the Garth Ferry with a big juicy pack.
Oh, I knew. I was thinking, was that going to come up this time? Big juicy pack.
I actually have large bundle written here, but I couldn't resist.
Scratch that. Strike that through.
That.
Yeah.
We need a big juicy pack again.
Yeah.
And so Benjamin went after her. And he followed her, or like trailed her to the Garth Ferry. Now, the Garth Ferry, for anyone familiar with Bangor, it used to go from where the Garth Pier is today, and it was the ferry that would take you across to Anglesey. And that's, Sarah is very familiar with that part of the world.
I literally just came back from there the other day, didn't I? Mm-hmm. Yeah, my mum lives in Menai Bridge.
Her name's not Anne, though.
Ooh, very nice.
No, my mum's name is not Anne, and let's
and she's never been accused of being a prostitute.
She's never been accused of being a prostitute. And let's take my mum's name out of your motherfucking mouth.
But if she was, she would be out of everyone's price range because she is that classy.
And you know what?
Sort of a compliment.
I think, let's end it there.
Only for politicians and high-paid athletes, yeah.
Okay, the end on my mum.
All right, we'll move on.
Let's continue.
Love you, Nan.
I was
going to say, I've just reduced myself back to my 13-year-old self making your mum jokes, so I apologise for that.
I take full responsibility for that. I am so sorry. So this was back in the day how people got across from Bangor to Anglesey. You took a ferry because this is 1811, so it was like a decade and a bit before the Menai Bridge was built. So Benjamin gets in the ferry, goes across to Anglesey, and he's not too late because as soon as he gets off the boat, he sees Anne coming out of a house not far from the ferry, and she's still carrying a bundle with her. And so he goes up to her, he catches her and accuses her of having been in his wagon rummaging around. And she admits to this, but she says, "Oh no, I was just sleeping in it. I was cold. I needed somewhere to sleep." He obviously doesn't believe this because she's carrying a bundle of stuff, and he asks her where all the stuff is that she had stolen. And he's like, "Oh, it's all right here. Here you go." And he looks at it and he's like, "That's not everything. Where's everything else?" And she didn't have it. So probably she was very, very quick and very good at what she was doing and was able to shift the stuff on because she wasn't wasting any, even though you're passing them on really quickly. But so, yeah, she managed to fence a lot of the stuff, but she still had enough on her to probably implicate her. So Benjamin takes Anne back to Bangor, gets her into custody, and we actually have a list of everything that was in the bundle. Would you like to hear?
Strap in, guys.
First thing.
Strap in.
Sorry,
Really
I
wanna
love
make a
that
strap-on
you're,
joke
you're
here,
the
but-
sensible one of this group, like trying to keep us in order. That is.
Someone's got to. So
I've never been called the sensible one. I love it. Yeah. Carry on. Yes.
right, we're going to lose it right at the first one, I think. So she had 2 beaver hats.
Good.
Why do we always mention beavers
Very
on any
good.
podcast we ever go on? We mention beavers.
That's true.
Genuinely, guys. I'm sorry. We just always do.
Well, it's either someone's wearing a beaver hat or it's something to do with their ravang, which is like a giant beaver monster.
Yeah. Well, next time if we mention it and it's not to do with any of those 2 things, then it's going to be problematic. Isn't it?
I would like it to be a beaver monster wearing a beaver hat. Only then will I be satisfied.
That's double beaver
Double
bingo,
fitted
isn't it?
beaver. Right. Moving on.
Yes, I've
Come on,
got a
right.
good laugh.
Come on
there.
now,
I'm
right,
happy with
guys, come on. We're doing really well, kind of.
We're so
Let's-
close. We're
Let's
so
get this.
close. Right, so she had 2 beaver hats, the value of 2 shillings. So these were probably either like men's top hats or the hat that's part of like. I'm sitting here like I'm wearing a hat.
She's actually gesturing. Like she's like, het wenna ripenna duigo spring. She's got- It's really funny.
Exactly. what
And I'm not
doing.
helping at all. I'm just letting her do it.
Or like the hat that Welsh women wear, like in the
Oh, yeah.
traditional.
Oh,
Yeah,
like the little
chimney.
bonnets. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the hat over top of the bonnet. Like it's like a narrow top hat.
Oh,
Google
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah.
those would have been potentially made out of beaver. So she stole 2 of those. She also stole 1 black bombazine gown.
Bombazine.
bombazine?
I know, yeah.
Bombazine. That is a great word, isn't it?
It does sound pretty. It sounds way too cool for the 1800s.
Yeah.
I think we need to bring it back. So bombazine it's just like a heavy, dense silk or like blend of silk and wool. It was just a really heavy fabric that was made or used to make like gowns back in the day. But yeah, bombazine.
Definitely
That
sounds
need-
like
that-
something to be talked about when you turned up in a party with women. Like, oh, I love your bombazine. Where'd you get that one from?
Yeah, I think that word
And your
needs to make a
beaver
comeback.
hat as well. You look amazing.
Babe, what are you wearing? Instead of like jeans and a nice top, it's like I'm going to wear my bombazine and a beaver hat.
Yeah, obviously the classic bombazine beaver hat combo.
So worried someone's going to be wearing the same thing. So that was also valued at 1 shilling. She also had 1 police.
Police.
So not police. Police.
Like a fleece? Some kind of
Police
fleece?
Navidad.
Good guess. Good guess. This was a jacket, typically a woman's, like a women's jacket that was in like a military style. So kind of think like My Chemical Romance.
Oh.
Kind of.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Bunch of-
yeah.
Yeah, a bunch of emos.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, over
What are
so
these guys
bombazine-
bloody dressed like in this day and age? Like the
So-
bombazine, beaver hats, a military style jacket. This
I
is
know.
an abomination, a Frankenstein's monster of fashion.
It's is it what the Black Parade? Maybe that's what they're
Yeah,
doing.
When I was a
Someone's
young
sitting there
boy,
playing like
yeah.
a single note on piano as they're counting through all of this
Yeah.
stuff. I wish there was pictures of like Victorian men, although this is like before Victorian, but like instead of the big bushy beards, they had the fringe.
Oh, yeah.
Black nails.
Oh,
the
absolutely.
mascara running down the cheeks. Yeah, okay.
It works. And then there are 2 more things. Well, not really 2 more things, 2 more items. She also had 432 metal buttons. It was
Can't have enough buns.
3.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's exactly
Yeah.
what I was going to say, actually, Jack.
3 gross of metal buttons.
Yeah.
Also valued. Oh, can you guess how much? These were
A
valued at?
penny a button.
Oh.
That sounds quite
1
fun
shilling.
thing to say. 1 shilling.
Yeah, penny a
Penny
button.
Penny
Yeah,
a
that's
button.
penny a button. Those are fun words. So also valued at 1 shilling. And then finally, she had a coach lamp without the glass. Also valued at 1 shilling. So all
Was
told,
it just for reference, shillings? How much is that in like today's value? Do you have?
So-
Do you know by any chance? Because at the moment you're saying like all these shillings, I'm thinking, is that a lot? Is that not?
it's actually not a lot. So she stole about, or what this was valued at, was about 6 shillings, and that's about 15 pounds today.
It's not
so
even
not a
worth
lot.
kicking up a stink about it.
But-
Get over it, mate.
But what we often see in records like this is the value of items being grossly underestimated, which may be surprising. That was done because the value, any crime involving property, the punishment, if you were found guilty, was often based on the value. So it could be the difference between life and death, often. So valuing things, even, I mean, this bombazine was probably quite posh. It's made out of silk. It was a bombazine gown. It was an entire dress. It probably was worth more than, like,
I was about to say, if someone's taking my
today.
2 beaver hats, I'm going to hell and back to get my justice out of that.
Exactly. Like, I don't even think you can get 1 beaver hat from Temu for £1.
Yeah, trying a beaver hat today, that'd be an heirloom for the future, okay?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I don't know how much a police jacket would cost, but even that you probably can't even get one on Vinted for less than £5. So I think they were grossly underestimating this stuff here, because it was valued at 6 shillings for everything, and so that's about £15 today.
But didn't they do that for a reason? Like, why would they undervalue things?
It was literally just to try and save someone's life, essentially.
In Wales in particular, as opposed to England?
So it was a practice in England and Wales, but in Wales they tended to be a bit nicer. There was Wales typically, so this was a period known as, well after the fact, known as the Bloody Code. And that's because the number of crimes that carried the death penalty increased from like the late 17th century to the early 19th century, from about 50 to over 200. And it was mostly property offenses that carried the death penalty, because people who had property were very worried. Just because the world was changing so much, they were worried about, poor young upstarts getting their hands on their kids.
A history podcast the other day talking about another light-hearted topic, eugenics, and how in other countries it was
Tell us more.
Well, in other countries it was based on race, but in Britain it was based on class. So a lot more of it was around.
That's so not surprising, is it?
Yeah, I know. It's like, but in America you hear so much about like racial tensions, and the UK was so much more hyper-fixated on poor v rich. So when they were on about, like you said, they changed the law so much to penalise poor people as much as possible, even to a point where they were looking to make only poor people breed with poor people, and then rich people breed with rich people, and have like
you really see
classes.
That. Yeah, and you totally see that in this sort of stuff, where like most of the crimes, the new crimes that carried the death penalty, were kind of fairly minor by our standards, but it was the wealthy protecting their property from poor people. So things like destroying a rabbit warren or cutting down trees, or poaching and those sorts of things. And in Wales, I mean, the same laws applied in England and Wales because the English, obviously. I've done loads of podcasts on that. I know, right? Like, we've been down that path. But the way the law was administered in Wales was often far more lenient, because people didn't want to dick on their own. So the juries had to administer Welsh law or English law in Wales, but they had their own workarounds. So they would try and find ways, even if the evidence was conclusively against someone, they'd try and find these workarounds. So it was common. You would see this also in England, but in Wales especially, where they'd find loopholes to try and make it easier.
You'd undervalue a military jacket here, a beaver hat there, and be like, right, they're under the threshold for a death penalty. Done my job.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Square it with God. Yeah,
it's like, and I mean, let's be like, the jury probably all knew Anne pretty well too. So wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah.
Get a discount next time, lads.
Her.
Yeah.
Our Anne, no, she's good as gold. She is. No, she stays. Bring her back.
Yeah.
There's probably an element of that as well. Like, people knew each other, and you don't want to send someone to the gallows if they're your neighbor, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So Anne was charged. She was so charges were pressed against her. She went to the next sitting of the Great Sessions. She was taken to the grand jury. The grand jury's like, yes, there is enough here to go to trial. So she was tried. So she faced the judge and jury. She pled not guilty. What do you think happened to her? Do you think she was found guilty, or do you think she was found not guilty?
I mean, all the evidence says she was guilty.
Yeah, but then we've tripped ourselves up, I think, in the first one by assuming the pessimists' side of things. So
go down the community aspect of what Andrew's just saying. Then I think they're going to find a salt of the earth. Go, nah, she's one of our own.
She's a good gal. She's a good gal. Yeah. Let her off.
Well, I hate to disappoint you guys. She was found guilty.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
You give us
she
your
wasn't
1 too, haven't you?
She wasn't executed. She
Okay,
was
so
found guilty and she was transported for 7 years, which means she was probably transported for life.
what does that mean,
So-
transported?
So transportation, well, that's why Australia has so many white people.
Oh.
Ah,
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
we
so-
have discussed that before. We said
Just to
that.
simplify it.
That sounded really bitchy.
Yeah.
And that's
I
right,
wonder why so many
Australia.
white people in Oz. Yeah.
I've been watching a lot of Married at First Sight Australia, so I think I'm just...
That's literally what I've just been doing before I came on this pod.
Oh,
Well, we're
Jackie and Ryan, am I right?
Here.
We'll
Right?
talk about
Oh
it.
my
We'll
God.
talk about this
Oh.
later. But I'm
God,
just saying,
Jackie.
not Jackie. What a basket case. Anyway,
Spoiler.
sorry.
Anyway.
Back to wine and crime. Sorry.
So she would have been. So transportation was the way the Brits decided that they'd deal with their criminals. So by just getting rid of them, prisons are overcrowded. That whole rhetoric isn't new. So initially they'd ship them off to America, but then they couldn't do that anymore because they didn't have America. And then there was a brief period of time where they're like, "Oh, we know, Africa, where we keep getting all those people from and exploiting them and doing horrible things to them. Why don't we put our criminals there?" So for a very brief period of time, they shipped off British criminals to the west coast of Africa. That went horribly wrong because they basically put them in a malaria-infested swamp.
Oh, yeah.
So they're like, "Oh yeah, this isn't going to work, is it?" And so then they got their hands on Australia and started just pumping all the criminals there. And so Anne would have been
Makes you
destined.
proud to be British, doesn't it?
I know, right? Like the things we do.
Yeah.
Nah, 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 nah. I said I wouldn't sing. So Anne would have been destined for there. There are records we could probably look up to find if she actually made it there. A lot of people would have ended up stuck in prison hulks. So these big ships that were stuck in various places, like in the Bristol Channel and also in the Thames, that were full of, they're basically prison ships.
Oh, that sounds
That would
like
eventually
hell.
then go off. It does, doesn't it?
Oh,
the
that'd be
whole
so
thing
scary.
sounds horrible. She would have been sentenced for 7 years. So technically speaking, at the end of those 7 years, she could come back. But if she wanted to, guess who had to pay for it?
Yeah, it's gonna.
Yeah, I was going to say no
you'd
means to do that. Yeah.
And you'd have to survive it as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. So it would have been great. Now, one of the reasons why Anne may have been transported where, say, a man in her situation may not have been, is the Brits were very interested in turning Australia into a proper colony. And to do that, you needed, and most offenders are men. So if most of the people that you're shipping off to your penal colony are men, but you actually want to turn it into a proper colony, you need women.
I see.
Anne's already
You
proven
need
herself.
women.
You need women, and Anne's already
You need women. That's the other T-shirt we're going to
I was
need
just
women.
about to say, yeah. T-shirt number 4.
you need, and Anne's already proven herself DTF. So, yeah, so that could be another reason why she was shipped off. So, and that's the story of Anne, and that is how we find evidence of sex workers in Wales. So, very little of that actually had to do with sex work, but wines and crimes. There's a bit more. There's a bit. Actually, to be fair, there's a fair bit more sex work. We've saved the best for that.
I was going to say, I hope you haven't. Yeah, no spoilers for the actual event.
No,
on
we've
this
saved
pod,
the sex for the
Oh,
event.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You think
But-
double fisting was big on this one? Just imagine on the event.
So, we said earlier that we were drinking a Chenin Blanc, which is a white wine. Do you want to come on a journey with me?
Yes, please.
Figure out why I've paired it with this
Please
story.
do.
Right. So it's a Chenin Blanc, which is a French grape variety. It's a white wine. It's called The Power of Love. Right.
Nice.
Now, I thought
Right?
that's why I've been singing it in my head this entire episode,
Yeah.
and it's been so difficult to not. But I thought this was really ironic, as there was clearly no love in this story, no love whatsoever, just thievery and betrayal. So that's point number 1. That's tenuous link number 1.
No, I like it. It's like an anti-theme almost. That's good.
Thank you. Right, number 2. So this gets a little bit technical in the wine world, but I'll explain it to you. So grapes undergo, well, in this wine in particular, they underwent slight skin contact before the fermentation, And what this does is it draws out more of the fruit flavors.
Sounds like Jack's sex life. Sorry.
It's like skin contact. Okay.
You know what? I was so confused for a second then. Maybe I've had too many buds, but when I was like, draws out the fruit contact. I was like, what the fuck?
Fruit flavors.
Fruit flavors,
skin contact.
Yeah, skin contact. And then I went, right, skin contact.
Fruity skin contact.
Fruity skin contact. That
you
makes
said,
sense.
I held it in for so long because you said Banga. You mentioned Banga loads. I didn't say Banga. I hardly know her. And I did everything not.
You know what? Yeah. I was thinking when you said that, I was like, God, I know Franks is struggling as much as I am right now, but let's keep it.
Hang on, I barely know her.
Why draw the line there?
I don't know.
I know. The weird ways
you got to have a line.
I can say double fist until the cows come home, but Banga hardly knew her.
You have to have a code.
Yeah.
You got to give a code.
Right. I'll respect that.
Well done. Right, so we've got the skin contact, which is kind of. Have you heard of an orange wine before?
Yes,
I've heard of it. I have no idea like what it is or how it's made.
Well, very, very briefly, it involves. So no oranges were harmed in the making of an orange wine.
Okay,
it's basically a white wine on crack. Ooh. So it's a white wine that's had extended contact with the skins. Because if you look at any kind of grape that you eat, inside of the grape, it's just mulch. It's clear. There's no color to it. Mulch. It tastes kind of watery and grapey. And I mean, I say grapey, but you know what I mean. So,
my grape is very grapey.
So when you're making a wine, this is the professional way that I talk about things. If you want the real flavor and color and anything interesting in the wine tends to come from the skins. So with a white wine, generally speaking, people want a really nice, clean, easy drinking white wine, Pinot Grigio, Sauvignon Blanc, whatever it is. But if you have a little bit of extended skin contact, which sounds really creepy.
A bit of skin on skin, yeah.
Bit of skin on skin. It draws out a little bit more of the fruit flavors. It just makes it a little bit more interesting. So this wine has had a little bit more of that skin contact, which again, I think is fun because if she had actually achieved the skin contact with the guy that she wanted, then she might not have been grassed up, right?
You're right. That is tenuous, but it
is. Hang on, I've got more.
Tenuous for a person who doesn't know about wine. For a person who knows about wine, this is absolutely on point, I imagine. But
right,
yeah.
I've got two more. Strap in. Number 3. The wine spent 2 months with full lees contact. Now, lees is the dead yeast cells that you get after a fermentation. More often than not, you just get rid of this shit because it adds texture and like biscuity notes. Think of like champagne, stuff like that.
Biscuity notes.
Biscuity notes, toasty notes. That's why more often than not, you just have like a nice, clean tasting wine. But if you do decide to keep the wine in contact with the lees, then it adds texture and in particular richness, which is how Anne must have felt after taking that guy's stuff. Yeah?
How do you do it?
I'm imagining like a board, with like all the red like string like going for all these things, and you're just going, I've got it, I've cracked it.
Oh, genuinely, like my brain is something else. Okay, we've got one
more.
Incredible. And this is I think you're going to enjoy this one. So lastly, the wine is from Franschhoek in South Africa, which is about 50 kilometers from Cape Town. And it translates as French corner in Dutch. And it's a region that's been growing grapes since the 1600s because exiled French Protestants called the Huguenots brought French vines over and settled in the area. And of course, that link there is that Anne was sentenced to transportation, which means sent away so that she's someone else's fucking problem. And that's exactly what the French, they were like, well, you do not want us, we will go elsewhere and do better. Well, that is absolutely fine. And now like Chenin Blanc is like a huge, like an amazing white grape variety that flourishes.
Yeah, it's one of the go-tos, isn't it, with all the big hitters.
And then I told Angela this. I was like, "Hey, this is the wine I want to do with your story. I've heard something about," and I called them the Huguenot. And she's like, "I did a fucking lecture about this. Do you want to?" So Ange actually knows all about them, obviously.
I sent Sarah a voice note that was the Huguenot part of the lecture that I gave a couple of months ago, which was a lecture on it was a first year lecture on migrants. So I won't do it all now. We don't need that. But it was so Huguenots were French Protestants who, because France is a Catholic country, they were persecuted, and so they're a particular type of Calvinistic Protestant French person who fled over, and there was lots of different ways of persecution. A lot of them came to the UK, but they went basically anywhere in the world that it felt safe, and they often were highly skilled. So winemakers, a lot came to the UK, a lot settled in London. So there's a huge French diaspora around the world. Obviously, South Africa, that we get with this wine. Did you know that there's a link with Wales in that as well?
Brittany?
Tell.
There is a village near Caerphilly, so in the Rumney Valley, called Fleur de Lis.
What?
And that was settled by French Huguenots.
Fleur de Lis.
I mean, the name kind of gives it away.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah, it's not the most.
I mean, it's probably pronounced like, is Fleur Lis in like a chile now?
And another fun fact: there's a word that we get from the Huguenots that's in English now that perfectly describes their experience, who they were, what they were doing. Any guesses what that word might be? So the people who are fleeing persecution and going to other parts of the world because of that.
They are French originally.
L'escape.
Who's typing? You're someone's typing.
It's not me. It's not me.
It's not me. Well, it's not me. So it's got to be you.
It's not me. I'm genuinely not typing. I'm thinking hard.
What's the word for a person or group of people who flee a hostile situation to have a better life?
Looking for
refuge.
Refugees. Yeah, so Huguenots were the first.
Well done for Googling.
I was going to say,
refugees.
Sarah, that was a really, really mysterious hint you gave there. Refugee.
Refuge.
Refuge.
Can I give a wine fact that
Yes, please.
So, when you mentioned transportation, I was like, I do know that, because me and Jax covered it on the pod before about a Welsh person who was transported. But 19 crimes is called that because there's 19 crimes that could get you deported. And it's named after that. there's the wine company 19 Crimes. Yeah, they're all named after.
No, I'm sure they don't know that, Frank. So
never heard of it.
They're named after the 19 crimes in England and Wales that get you deported for up to no good. And that's my fact.
Because it's like, what they must have chosen that based on. I'm so the period I study, it's like well over 200, but then there were major reforms in the Victorian period where they cut that way back. So they must have named that after Victorian legislation, which is way too modern for me.
Also, you need
I was
to know
thinking
that
the exact same thing, Angela.
Angela refers to anything pre her expertise as way back, which I think is really cute. It's just that's way back.
A little
way back.
Yeah.
And then there's a period of time I study, and that's ye olde.
Olde.
And then basically anything 19th century onwards is modern.
No one was impressed enough with my 19 crimes fact, and I think you should all be a bit more impressed with it.
What?
Oh, Frank, I'm
never heard that
sorry.
before.
I think it's because it's written on the back of the label.
Oh, what the fuck?
I'm so sorry. It's just
These two women who've got a literal podcast called Wine and Crimes. Who are like, listen, ladies, have you heard about this wine?
You guys might want to. Do you know anything about Spitfires?
Sit down, sweetheart.
I know someone who's
I got something to tell you.
Who's a teacher, and at the end of the year, the parents of one of their students, they gave them a bottle of wine just as an end of term gift. But they put so much thought into this, they cut out a little picture of their son and taped it.
That is mad.
To the label. Basically, it's basically saying drink this because you're like he's the reason you need this. And apparently the student, like this pupil, like good as gold, really wasn't that bad. But I just love the level of thought that the parents put into that.
The time, the energy.
There's a hint for all of the parents out there who have children in school. Do that for the teachers, at least the history teachers, and they'll love it.
It's not even. You don't even need to put a picture of your child. Just buy a bottle of wine for anyone who takes care of your child. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Don't worry about the picture thing. Yeah, the picture thing is redundant.
And ideally, come to me, Finn Van Cymru,
in the court market, or vinvancymru.co.uk.
I deliver locally, or you can do a click and collect on vinvancymru.co.uk, and I'll sort you out.
Is your child a bit of a bastard? Well, I have a great pairing with this.
Do you know what?
You know,
it's just I've got the amount of people who come in and they go, I've had a really terrible day. My wife bought a cat and I'm actually allergic. What can you pair with that? And I'm like, I love a challenge.
First,
Absolutely.
I say antihistamines, which you can wash down with this power of love, Chenin Blanc.
Yeah, it'll only get you massively hammered, not like paralytic hammered.
No, there is a wine for everything. There is absolutely wine for everything. And when you wake up the next day with a headache, there's a wine for that too.
That is something that I sort of feel like I'm missing out on. Right? I watched the film not that long ago, Sideways. Surely that's on your radar as wine drinkers. But like, I was sort of envious of the what's the word? It's like like you said, there's a wine for everything. There is such a variety. Whereas we just have lager. Tend to go for piss lager every single time. Maybe I should expand my horizons. Maybe not. That's up for debate. But I am sort of jealous. So if I liked, especially red wine, I feel like that's got a lot more. That seems to be the fancier stuff. Is that like the sort of more higher end? Because like I'll drink a white wine, but I'm not really a red wine.
It's funny. I know so many people who are like, "Oh, I love wine. I only drink red wine." But anyone I know who's actually like a proper wine drinker, like proper wine, or even comes from somewhere where they make lots of wine, like Spanish people I know, they drink all wine. So I think you drink what you like, but I think it's this like myth that a proper wine drinker only drinks red.
Yeah, I mean,
I suppose if you're cutting out one color, then you're just denying yourself half of what's on offer, I guess.
It's kind of like, however you feel at the time, and you've got your preference. I tend to go more towards white wines after being pregnant because you go 9 months without drinking any kind of wine. I think it's like, when you're younger and you're building up your tolerance to drink beer. Yeah. Like it takes a while. Like you think you're cool and you're like, I love this, but you don't love it. But you like you get through it and then
it's
then
not
you
like Coke, is it?
I really need
Coca-Cola. I add, by the way, not
exactly. And then you develop a taste, and then it's kind of that's like, what you need.
Yeah.
And same with coffee. You develop a taste for coffee. So
olives.
I develop. And olives, exactly. Olives is usually my non-alcoholic preference. So yeah, like now I guess I would go for a white wine over a red wine, not meaning that I don't appreciate reds, but also, like I say to everyone who comes into the shop, it doesn't really matter if you like bottom shelf £3 Tesco wine. Like you like what you like. Who cares?
So what you're saying is the fact that I like white means I'm in esteemed company. I've heard it from the horse's mouth, the wine professionals.
Esteemed company, and that you're a basic bitch like me. Yeah.
I'll take basic bitch. Yeah, if there's a wine professional who's a basic bitch, count me in. Yeah,
we're drinking a second from bottom shelf white wine right now.
We got 3 Chenins originally, and we scrapped the bottom shelf because it was a bit. It was like I don't want to judge, but I was like, let's not. We're better than this.
It's such a highbrow podcast. You can't bring on a bottom shelf.
It was more like, hey, other people can do this just because other people want to. Hey, if someone else wanted you to jump off a bridge, would you do it? No. So if
I would, if they had a nice Chenin
If someone wanted you to drink bottom shelf Lee fromage, would you do it? No. You would pick your own drink and drink it and enjoy it.
We're about to spin off into like Tales for Wine now.
Yeah.
Our own little, wine connoisseur podcast.
We are actually we're doing a Welsh wine podcast that's going to launch in about a month.
Oh, nice! Do you know? Is it?
So that's a thing.
Yeah.
Can we promote it on here?
Yeah, we're in the early stages of recording and stuff.
But
we're
when
really
this comes out,
excited
it'll be
about
about 10 days before the launch. So
hopefully,
yeah.
Have you got a name yet?
It's called Uncorked, the Welsh Wine Podcast.
I got a fact for you. 19 crimes. You should use
that one on your opening episode.
Please do.
It's not a Welsh wine.
Oh yeah. Oh god damn it.
Yes, Uncork the Welsh Wine Podcast. That will be hopefully. We've recorded a few of them. That will hopefully be launching.
Yeah, we're excited about it, but it's obviously like early days. And I imagine with you guys, how did it feel like when you were recording the first
we
few
deleted
episodes?
the first 10 episodes.
So many.
Right?
Yeah, we hated
right?
it. We didn't tell a soul. We never told any of our friends or family. It was like our dirty secret.
Until now.
Yeah.
I was thinking
We did it during COVID. It was like, this is never going to be a real thing. We'll just record. And then when we got to like the point of actually releasing it, it was like, you know what? I might just knock this on the head. I know we spent hours doing this and editing it and whatever, but maybe we should. I kind of realised I hate the sound of my own voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know what
get
that feels
into
like.
that.
Yeah.
Like even now, I'm used to editing stuff with my own voice in, but even now I'm like, how do people put up with me sounding like that?
No.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, but if we can do it, then you guys have got a much better chance.
Oh god, yeah, you guys are actually experts in your fields. Like we guys are just we've just chanced it the entire time.
I know nothing about Welsh wine.
Also, you guys know, but you guys just it's actually such a privilege to be able to just like record with you guys, because like I was listening to one of your episodes earlier. No, genuinely, like I know I'm being a bit whatever, but I was listening to one of your episodes earlier, and it's just you're just so funny, and you're quick as well. And so earlier, like Ange and I, we do so many things together, like events and stuff, and sometimes it's like, right, our careers are on the line, you know, people are gonna if I say something wrong about a wine, I'll get a fucking tweet or something the next day saying, well, actually, that the barrel aging for a Rioja is not what you said. And the same with Angela. She's a published she's a published lecturer, and she's got a PhD. And every now and again, you have one glass of wine, and you think, "Oh, did I say what I think?" So yeah, it's really nice to be able to like actually interact with people who are doing what they do because you like what you do, which is what we do as well, without like as much fear.
That's absolutely lovely what you're saying there. But Sarah, honestly, if you could hear some of the like Patreons and the late night episodes we've done that we've had to just squirrel away into the vault, never to be seen again. Honestly, like we do these things, and then the next day, should we put that one out? And then Frank's go, literally, I just listened to it. We cannot release that. Like that is, it's just
but I do
us
think,
just going like slurring and like
as in slurring, not saying
slurring our words because we're drunk, not racial slurring. Like that. Sorry, just to qualify that.
Then everyone gets racist. And, God.
But I think if you do a podcast about something you generally care about, that shines through, I think, and that's why people hang around to listen. Because I think if you're like positive or enthusiastic, that rubs off on your audience. So I think if you're both interested in the subject, it's going to be people want to listen. And I think you're both really funny. You're great guests, so I know the pod will be really good. And when it's ready to be publicised, let us know. We'll do what we can to promote it.
Oh, class! Thank you.
Oh, cheers, guys. We appreciate that.
Should we?
Should we
I was about to say, should we
wrap
call it like that?
Diolch unwaith eto. Thanks so much again for coming on. And just a reminder, it's the 21st of May, and people can find tickets at vinvan.cymru.
vinvancymru.co.uk.
I was so close.
You almost
So
had
close.
it. You almost had
close.
it. You almost did one thing right this entire podcast.
That delivery, the comedic delivery of that, chef's kiss. Perfect.
You said, right?
All right, and on that note, we're off. Diolch yn fawr. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. Ta-ra.